Hi folks, Dave, the Honest Audiophile. This is the Softears RSV mk2, and these are my Honest Audiophile impressions. I want to thank Softears for providing the RS5 mk2 for a review. Greatly appreciate it. Softears, you rock. Alright, so the Softears RSV mk2 or RS5 mk2. These will set you back $700 from your bank account. They are a 5-driver balanced armature configuration. 7 ohms of impedance, 122 decibels of sensitivity, and a frequency response range of 15 hertz to 40 kilohertz. The Softears RS5 mk2 comes in a black box. Has a little orange ribbon on it that says RS and has a 5 on it. Hear the truth. Taking off the lid, and you're greeted by some foam and a little case for some paperwork and an area for accessories. It's not really that spectacular of an unboxing experience for a $700 IEM, but it's nice enough to remind you, hey, this is, not a cheap IEM, and it has some nice accessories like this carrying case that is hard shell. It says Softears on it. It smells like real leather. Feels very, very soft and nice, but yet also sturdy, and is going to protect your IEM. Undoing the zipper, you have a nice bed for the RS5 mk2 to sit, and a good size pocket for your accessories. It is small enough to fit in a large pocket or a bag. It's definitely going to protect your RS5 mk2. You get a couple other accessories. You get an adapter for your cable that goes from 4.4 down to 3.5. You get a little cleaning tool, and then you get 2 bags of tips, and these are your standard Softears tip. You get your UC clears, which are wide bore tip, and then you get a gray tip, which is more of a olive grape shape. A little bit of a wider bore. It's not as wide as the UC clears, but it is wider than a narrow bore tip. I did find that the tips made a difference. The gray olive grape shaped tip kind of made the RS5 mk2 sound a little bit more leaning towards a V-shaped sound signature. You have bigger bass and a little bit more emphasis in the upper mids and lower treble regions, adding in a little bit more of a fun factor. And it was pleasurable, but it wasn't my favorite and preferred signature. The UC clears balanced things out a little bit more, made them a little bit more cohesive, and you didn't quite have as much emphasis in the upper mids and lower treble regions. I found that I preferred the UC clears and also the new UC titaniums, which I have on right now. The UC titanium tip has a little bit of a ring on the top, as you can kind of see there, and it just kind of adds a little bit more stability to the tip. It doesn't sink in as much, but it isn't quite as comfortable as the UC clear. I do find that over time it's not as comfortable. I can listen to it for about an hour with the titaniums on. I can listen to it for a couple hours with the UC clear. Sound wise, the titanium did sound like they had a little bit more of a clearness to them, but it was very subtle. So the Softears RS5 mk2 cable is a 2-pin connection. It has a decent sized 2-pin. It's not the smallest connector, but it's also pretty average. It is a 6N oxygen-free copper cable. The ear hooks have just enough tension in them. I do wish that they had just a little bit more and a little tighter. The cable itself is rather thick. It is a nicely built cable, but it has a little bit of a heft to it. And the termination is a little bit on the split is a little bit on the larger side. Cinch stays in place nicely for the most part. It does slide down just a little bit. And then there's a nice thick weave going into a very large termination, which is 4.4. Does not have swappable terminations, which is why they include this adapter. You plug it in and then you go to 3.5. Does not have swappable terminations, which I find kind of an interesting choice given that they give this kind of wire adapter instead, kind of like something you would see with headphones. I don't mind it, but it's just kind of a little bit on the more clunky side. I didn't notice that it adds any noise or anything like that. It's very well built. Overall, the cable's nice, and it does have a bit of a thickness, a little bit of a weight to it. It's not the lightest of cables. The RS5 Mark II is very nicely built. They are on the large size. So you have a medical grade resin, CNC aluminum alloy, and forged carbon fiber shell. I like that it has a V on the faceplate. It looks really sharp. But they are a bit on the large side. You have a small, very, very small ear wing tip, and then a longer nozzle and a fairly aggressive angle. I find that the RS5 feels well built, looks really nice, and even though they're heavy with the cable, they're actually fairly comfortable to wear. As mentioned with the titanium cable, I can wear them or titanium tip, I can wear them for about an hour before I have to adjust them. With the regular UC tip, I can wear them for a couple hours. One thing of note though, if I have this cable in and it's connected to a dongle and connected to a DAP or connected to a soundboard, the cable kind of, because of its heftiness, kind of pulls a little bit. And because the ear hooks aren't the tightest, they kind of pull on the RS5 just a little bit. And I find that it sometimes is pulling it out of my ears. And it didn't matter if I had the cable looped behind me going down my back or on the front. It just was kind of a little bit heavy and cumbersome at times with this cable. Noise isolation of outside noises is actually really good. It didn't matter if I was using the titanium UCs or the original UCs. I got really good noise isolation, probably some of the best when it came to in-ears of a universal design. I found that it's probably about 66% of outside noises being blocked. The only things I was really able to hear were loud things like vacuum cleaners and coffee grinders, and very loud vehicles on the outside. Using them as a monitor at my church, it was very difficult to carry on conversations with people when I had them in, but it did put me in a very nice secluded spot all by myself. I could pick out everything that was going on in front of me on the stage. So they work very well with noise isolation. Using foam tips even helps even more, and you get upwards to about 70% of outside noises being blocked. So the build is nice. I like the look of them. I like the feel of them. I like the design of them. The weight of them is a little bit on the cumbersome side, and the noise isolation is excellent. Being 7 ohms of impedance and 122 decibels of sensitivity, they're fairly easy to drive. I did find that even though they have a 4.4 balanced termination on their cables, they don't necessarily need to be run balanced in order to bring out the best. They do run very good on pretty much any source. I didn't find them to be really sensitive either to hissing on higher output impedance devices. I found that they were pretty content on anything that they ran, whether that was a dongle, a DAP, or desktop. I found that pretty much anything could get them loud. They do scale with better sources, and it brings out a more rewarding presentation when paired with a well quality, very good performing DAC and amp, or a very good performing DAP or dongle. But for the most part, pretty much anything powered them, including the soundboard that we use at our church, which is a Mackie VLZ24. So I found that overall they were content on anything that they were paired with. How do the Softears RS5 Mark II sound? I found that the Softears RS5 Mark II has a unique presentation. It's not necessarily completely neutral, but it's also not completely all-arounder or super fun sounding. It's kind of a mixture of it all combined together into one very good sound. And there you go. I just spoiled the whole thing. Yes, I like the Softears RS5 Mark II a lot. The bass of the RS5 Mark II is very fun, very engaging, and very detailed and extremely well controlled. I found that the Softears RS5 Mark II reaches down deep, and it has a lot of rumble, grumble, very good texture. And the sub bass, you get that to it. You get that kick and that punch and that slam, and just it hits hard in the mid bass. And then the upper bass also has nice power and authority to it. But yeah, at the same time, it's very well controlled. It doesn't get out of control and become sloppy mess. It is a very well controlled bass, even though there is a lot of it. This bass hits hard, it hits deep, and it has a resounding presence about it. You can feel it. It has that texture to it, and there is a to it. When the bass, drums, and guitars and all of the things that reside down in bass, all those instruments, the brass instruments that reach down, and organs and things like that, it has that power and that authority, and it just grabs your attention, and it gives you the details and the resolution. But then also vocals, it has a presence when you listen to a bass singer, and it just has this enjoyment factor, but yet detailed and resolving, natural tone and timbre. I was really surprised that this is an all BA set, and I'm getting bass that is, you would think that there's some dynamics in it. It just has this factor about it. The bass is fantastic on the Softears RS5 Mark II. Mids. The mids have a fullness about them, a presence about them that just kind of grabs you. There's emotion in the mids, and it has an ability to connect with the emotional side of things, and you can feel it and enjoy it, and yet at the same time you can nitpick it and get the details. There's enough air and space to keep instruments and vocalists separated. It has good tone and timbre, and you can dissect each individual instrument, and it has its own little place. Everything is layered properly. It has nothing's fighting for attention in the mids, and on a few tracks, and at times the bass can be a little bit too much, and the mids will take a slight back seat. They're never totally overshadowed, but every now and then that bass can be a little bit too dominant. But for the most part, those mids are balanced, they're cohesive, and they're engaging, and they're emotional. There's a fullness about them, good note weight, and just like the bass, there's depth to them, and there's air, and there's space, and there's presence. And I find that every instrument, you can tell what instrument it is and follow it through the track. It has very good timbre and excellent tonality, very natural sounding. Treble. Treble extends nicely. There's good air and space, nice energy, good sparkle, nice bite and crispness. But yet there's also this slight smooth roundness to it, just enough to kind of take that extra little bit of edge off and to make them a little bit more pleasurable. And if you're sensitive to treble, if you're sensitive to that little extra bitiness and edginess that some can have, The RS5 Mark II softens that slightly, not enough to make it be fully rounded and smooth, and not to be neutral. It still is neutral, but it just doesn't quite have as much of that nitpicky side as some trebles can have. I find that the tone and the timbre is very good in the treble. Just like the bass and the mids, you can dissect the instruments and you can catch those leading and those edges of instruments, and you can determine what instrument it is and follow it through the track. And I find that there's good air and space and just enough energy and just enough of that bitey, crispy edginess without going into fatigue mode or being too analytical and too nitpicky. The soundstage of the RS5 Mark II is eye-poppingly good. It's very wide. I was rather impressed at how wide the stage is of the RS5. It goes small, medium, large, grand. You can get some big open landscapes with the RS5, and it does a very good job of portraying differences in venues: small, medium, large, grand. And then it also does a really good job with its imaging from side to side and placement. It's very precise and accurate. You can lock on and follow things, and you can track them as they go out and as they come in. And they just kind of fade out and fade in very well. Also does a really good job with depth. You can look into the stage quite well, and you can really place things because it has excellent layering. Nothing is fighting for its own place. Nothing is crowding somebody out. It all has its own individual spaces and is seated very well. You can definitely nitpick a stage, and you can tell where it is: right, left, center, in between. If it changes and moves around, it does a very good job in that regard. I find that the details and the resolution of the RS5 are also very good. I did not miss anything, and I was hearing things that I haven't heard before in a track. It was a very revealing IEM, but at the same time, it's also very resolving. And if something has edges and crispness to it, or if it's not recorded well, it's not mastered well, you're going to know that. The one thing that it does, though, is it softens it and it rounds it and smooths it just slightly, so it's not quite as bitey and edgy, and it's not quite as nitpicky. Even though the details are there and it's very good at resolving it, it's just not kind of force feeding it at you. It's not quite as forthright as some neutral IEMs can be. Tone and timbre is very natural, especially for a all BA set. I found that it was very accurate and true in its tonality and in its timbre, and I was able to dissect the stage, determine on vocalists and instruments, and follow them all the way through the tracks with ease. So, the Softears RS5 Mark II. Yeah, this is good. I like it a lot. It's fun, it's engaging, it's hard hitting, it's deep, it's layered, it's natural, it's accurate, and it's true. But yeah, it's musical and analytical. How does it compare to a couple other IEMs? Well, let's start with its smaller sibling, and that is the Studio 4. Now, I found that the Softears Studio 4 has a little bit more of an airy, a little bit thinner of a presentation. It's still very natural and accurate with its tone and timbre, but it doesn't have the heft. It doesn't have the note weight. It doesn't have that power and that authority that the RS5 Mark II has. The Studio 4 has a little bit more airy presentation, has a little bit more thinness in its tone and timbre, and isn't quite as detailed and resolving, nor is it quite as good with its naturalism and fullness sounding. But the Studio 4 is very good for an IEM that is just a step below the RS5 Mark II. And then you have the the Westone Mach 60. Now, the Westone Mach 60 is my reference IEM. This is an IEM that I use on a daily basis as my go-to IEM. It is my favorite IEM, and I use it as my reference for mixing and mastering and monitoring at church. And I find that the Westone Mach 60 has a more neutral analytical presentation. It's not as thick and full and as engaging and fun sounding as the RS5, especially in the bass, but it is slightly more detailed and resolving and slightly better with tone and timbre. It's a little bit more natural. When it comes to that resolution, it's a little bit more nitpicky. It has a little bit more bite, edge, and crispness to it. It's not smoothing over and rounding the edges, so it's not as fatiguing sounding as the RS5. The Westone Mach 60's stage also isn't quite as big as the RS5's, but it is just as good with its depth and layering and separation, and it's slightly better with its imaging and placement. So I find that the Softears RS5 Mark II, I really enjoy this, and this is a very fun and engaging IEM that I definitely would use as a mixing, mastering, and monitoring IEM, but I would be aware of that bass being a little bit full and how it does at times overshadow the mids and the treble just a little bit on more bass heavy tracks. So do be aware that the bass is a little bit more dominant and prominent sounding, and it is a little bit more on the full side. But because of its abilities with details and resolution and tone and timbre and being very natural and accurate with its note weight, I find that the RS5 Mark II would be good and adequate as a monitor. But it is also a very good all-arounder, very pleasant listening, very musical, and very engaging. So I do highly enjoy the Softears RS5 Mark II, and this one is going to be going into my list of reference IEMs that I'll be using to test other gear against. This has been Dave, the Honest Audiophile. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. Speaking of next videos, somewhere on the screen is subscription links, notification bells. If you haven't already, please check those off. Don't forget to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to the video, and check out all the links down below. There's all kinds of information on there regarding how you can contact the channel, follow the channel, support the channel. Speaking of supporting the channel, I want to thank my supporters through Patreon, YouTube memberships, and one-time gifts. Thank you very much for all that you give to the channel. It is much appreciated. If you're interested in supporting the channel, it'd be greatly appreciated. So check out the links down below for ways that you can support the channel. Also down below, there's all kinds of other information regarding gear recommendations, music recommendations, and gear rankings, and all kinds of other things. So check out the links down below. And lastly, don't forget to enjoy the music, and that honesty is the best policy.